Hey, hi. Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, senior film writer for Now Magazine, and this is the other thing I do. It's another Friday bonus episode because, it's a long weekend, and my guest for this one is Peter Sarsgaard, an actor and producer with a filmography that runs from Kimberly Pierce's Boys Don't Cry and Billy Ray's Shattered Glass through Lona Scherfig's Uneducation and Kelly Reichardt's Night Moves. He was in Errol Morris's Wormwood, and he'll be in Matt Reeves' The Batman. He works with a lot of great people, is my point. Right now, you can see him playing debauched journalist Walter Durante in Agnieszka Holland's Mr. Jones, freshly released on digital and on demand. Peter picked Knights of Cabiria, Federico Fellini's 1957 look at life in post-war Italy, starring the filmmaker's wife, Giulietta Masina, as his heroine, a sex worker living on the outskirts of Rome who endures one trauma after another, some big, some small, with endless positivity and optimism. That's the plot, and it may not sound like much, but what Fellini and Masina do within the space they create for themselves is truly remarkable, and I couldn't have asked for a better person to discuss it. This is Someone Else's Movie.
I haven't seen every Fellini movie, but I saw quite a few of them because I had this Italian Jesuit teacher in high school who had a class after school. His name was Father Gararelli.
Okay.
And he showed all Italian cinema on VHS. And that's when I first saw the movie. And he also, showed more scandalous ones like the Dolce Vita and stuff. But something about Giulietta Masina that, there's really not many actors like her. You can't really figure out what she's doing because it's so emotionally available and real. And she's got this performative thing going on simultaneously.
Yeah, it's a performance I remember the performance more than I remember the movie. Rewatching it last night, I was surprised at the order of sequences because I had thought of it as more of a straight line. Yeah. But I remember her so vividly.
Mm-hmm. I remember thinking when I first saw it, because it starts with her getting pushed into the water.
Yeah.
And then when you get to the end, in my mind, you've still got the memory of that, and you're thinking, is he going to is it going to be bookended?
I assume, yeah, the first time.
And I was watching it again just now to talk to you, and I was watching it with my children actually, and translating, my youngest, it was going by too fast for her to read, so I was reading it. And it got to be toward the end, and my wife had not seen it, neither had my kids, and everyone kind of looked at me and went, is it going to be okay? Get appropriate? And I was like, I know the ending, because the ending is unforgettable. It's probably one of my favorite endings of any movie. The way she looks into the camera.
Yeah, it's breathtaking. It's that thing that everyone, how can I put this? A lot of filmmakers think they can pull that moment off, and a handful. Desplechin does it in A Christmas Story or a Christmas Story. Maybe once or twice I've seen it work as well, but it's just it's so shattering. And we'll obviously jump around.
It's also because Fellini is on the other side of that camera. I mean, not literally holding the camera, but that relationship is so strong.
Yeah.
And she's so comfortable that I think a lot of actors, whenever I've had to look into camera, it's very nerve-wracking to look into the camera.
Well, you're trained not to do it, right? Your entire career is about not addressing.
Trained not to do it. Your eyes don't want to do it. And you're also looking at a reflection of yourself frequently in the lens.
Oh, yeah.
And it's deeply uncomfortable. And she looks so comfortable.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really nice, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it is the times we live in right now, the end of that movie is basically she has nothing. She has absolutely nothing. And it's all going to be okay.
Yeah.
And you're because we have music and each other and art and life and all of the intangible things, and that big wad of cash is gone, and all of that whoring that got her that cash, it's gone too. And where is she now? Someplace new.
Yeah, it's such a moving and heavily, I mean, I'm trying to articulate it. I don't have the Catholic background personally
Mm-hmm.
for what goes on throughout the film, but
Yeah.
it is, you know, like it's very clearly a redemption story. But at the very end of it, it's not that she has anything to be redeemed for. That's what strikes me as so powerful, is that she's just happy. She's just
Yeah.
she's not absolved because I don't think she sees herself as a sinner.
No,
She
she doesn't judge
carries.
her own behavior, and like whoring probably is the wrong word.
No,
You
it's
know,
the one
like
they use in the film. They throw it around
it
a
is,
bit. So
it is, but it's also like she's quite innocent for what you imagine someone involved in the sex trade would be.
yeah,
You know, like, and quite like easygoing about it. It's not very Catholic, actually, not very self-flagellating at all.
no, not to her. But then there's I mean, the whole thing about the man with the sack was the scene, the 7-minute scene that was deleted after the initial screenings at
Yeah.
Cannes, because the Catholic Church apparently, they never confirmed it, but Fellini always believed that the Catholic Church objected to the idea that they themselves, the church, wasn't taking care of people. So this man with a sack had to wander around giving out charity.
Yeah.
Fellini's argument is that that is an active Catholic person doing the thing that the church should be doing. And
That guy's so random. When he first appeared, I
yeah,
remember I was like, this guy's like from another movie. He just like walks in, you're like, and he goes to the people in the caves and everything, and you're like, and actually I've been to a part of Italy, oh, where is it? That has caves like
okay.
that. And so I always imagined these very specific caves. And yeah, who is he? Is he like some kind of Santa Claus or something?
The
In
film
that
doesn't seem to
moment,
know what to do with him either, right? It's when you say he's wandered in, or he's from another movie. Cabiria is herself from another movie. The you know, the Fellini cinematic universe that extends through all of the other ones, and
yeah,
it is possible that he has a movie that we just haven't seen, that he's living an existence that we're just not privy to.
I think that's right. I mean, it's like a little coda thing, or not a coda in the middle. It's like a
Mm-hmm.
little parenthetical part. And actually, when Maggie was watching it, she was like, "Oh, this movie quite clearly has like sections, like the section with the famous actor guy.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? Then you know, that section, but yeah, I love the part in the church. I mean, for me, because the fervor of the extras around
Mm-hmm.
her, none of whom you know, is so full on and so believable and so real. And she's still Chaplin-esque.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But around her is reality. And what's cool about that is like, and Fellini does this in some of his other movies too, is like that idea that we have now post Marlon Brando and all those people of acting being a certain thing where it's like very realistic and very as you are kind of thing, method or whatever.
Sure.
He's got like that reality, which is more intense than most reality that you see in that church scene, like in any movie that I'm in. And then she's still doing her like, you know, little monologue in her head that you can fully read that's kind of acted out through those huge eyes.
Yeah. It felt to me, the first time I saw it, I think the first time I saw it would have been when the restoration played in 35 mil and it came to Toronto. And so 20 years ago, easily 98, 99, whenever that was. And it felt to me like it was Fellini trying to be near-realist. I remember thinking, because I'd just been exposed to Rossellini's films
Yeah.
and thought, oh, this came out of that. And this time through, it feels like Fellini's arguing with Rossellini, that he's saying that you can have this sort of commedia dell'arte scope and scale in a realistic depiction. He clearly, like, he didn't have the money to build a world around her the way he does in Amarcord or in Satyricon or the later
I actually
films.
just saw Amarcord also. See, for me, I would rather have something that was more like this.
Yeah, I kind of I'm inclined to agree. I like
Oh,
his fantasies. I like his dream films, but it's just so much more interesting to see how he regards the real world, or how he functions within the real world, and how he inserts Cabiria, who is, she's, I think it was Ebert who said or either Ebert or Stephanie Zacharek said that she has a voice like a foghorn in the presence of a silent movie character. And that's a contradiction. That's just something that shouldn't work.
Yeah.
And you just can't not track her. You watch her, follow her through everything. Crowd scenes, I'm always looking for her, and she's a little short. The eyebrows make her stand out.
The eyebrows, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there are relationships like this, creative relationships between filmmakers and actors, but this is one of those things where Fellini, he clearly wants to show us what she can do and showcase her, because he knows her so well and she trusts him. And so you get this.
And no one else would have seen it like he saw it, you know?
Yeah.
Like part of me, I was watching it and I was like, who do we have that is sort of like Giulietta Masina? I can think of. I'm trying to think of anyone that really can kind of, because she has such a massive heart. It's so swollen with feeling. And I mean, for my money, as good as Chaplin at any of that sort of playful shit, like the way she takes the chicken to comfort herself. She, like, her house in the middle of nowhere, this odd thing that's like out of a Kusturica movie, you know, like pops out of the house, upset, goes out, pulls out the chicken, sits on the front step for a second with the chicken, goes back in. What is going on? And so playful and wonderful. I mean, I would love it. For me, it inspires me as an actor, because so much of what we do now is like really just searching for some sort of ecstatic realism, you know, sort of thing, like
Sure.
Real, but in a kind of ecstatic, operatic space, because everyone's attention span, nobody can handle like, the big movies are not going to have like long Cassavetes sequences of people playing games in living rooms, hanging out, being as they were, drinking scotch.
Sure.
So it's all very compressed, but everybody's taste is for what is recognizable and quote unquote real. And I do miss, as an actor, being asked to more mix things up like that, you know, because I think I could do it. Maybe, you know, not like Giulietta Masina, but, you know, I would at least like the chance.
Yeah, it feels like there is an opportunity. I've been watching some of the things that are being produced in isolation now. There's an ITV series called Isolation Stories, which is basically actors shooting themselves in their own homes in character, performing, and with their families holding cameras in some cases. Eddie Marsan and his two sons are in one together, playing a family that isn't theirs. The two Glennisters, who aren't Philip, father and son, are in another one. And it feels like there is this possibility happening right now where people don't know what the rules are again.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you can go bigger, or maybe you can go smaller or sideways and reinvent your own skill set, because literally no one is telling you not to do it. It's just the possibilities are endless. And
absolutely.
I'm really curious all of a sudden to see what comes out of this, because maybe we will get a new strange.
Maggie and I made one. It's going to be on Netflix in a couple of weeks.
What? No one tells me anything.
Yeah. It's called Penelope. Maggie wrote it and directed it, and I star in it. It's only me. And a friend of ours who had coronavirus in February, who has antibodies, came up, and, you know, we did social distancing, but he did have the antibodies. He shot it. And my children did like props and, you know, everything else. And I'm extremely proud of it. It's like, I mean, it's one of the better things I've ever done.
So
it is got both. It's humor. There's humor in it, and it's also got a heart. Yeah, it's something different.
But there you go. This is the trust that you get from working with someone you know as well as anyone can know another person.
And she's about to direct me in a movie that we're doing in the late summer with Olivia Colman and myself and Dakota Fanning and Jessie Buckley.
Oh, well, none of those people are, you know.
And that's based off of an Elena Ferrante novel called The Lost Letter.
And you're shooting that in New York, or?
It's between two places right now, and I don't want to jinx it, but we're not shooting it in the United States.
Okay, no, of course, Ferrante would be Europe.
Yeah.
But okay, if I can just ask, is it safe? Are you comfortable with that? With working
Well,
at the...
it's safer than. I think what's going to be interesting is it's going to be a very small crew that are going to quarantine together.
Okay.
Like first go up and you have to do, I mean, this is where it gets expensive. You go, it's going to be filmed in a different country that has a quarantine policy. So we'll go there and all quarantine separately for 14 days. You're paying for hotels for 14 days.
Sure, yeah.
Then you go together as a pod, and you've all done the 14 days. Now you go together as a pod and you stay together for the shoot. And we shoot 6-day weeks and we shoot it in 4 weeks. And I think I'm kind of hoping that it'll be artistic magic, because everything I've ever done that way, starting with like Boys Don't Cry, we shot like, Boys Don't Cry was basically shot like quarantine style. We all lived in like this, we took over this housing complex on the next to a freeway in Dallas. We all ate, slept, lived, hung out there. They would go to set together, film, come back. So, I mean, I don't know how big movies are going to be done. I think there'll be a lot of like people coming at different times and all of that. But in terms of little movies, and this one's not like super little, but it's pretty little. I think it's going to be like, we have to create isolation. Creating that isolation. I used to always say like filming on location is a gift. We miss our families, but we are an artistic family. So, and there's no like going back, oh, I need to get back to my whatever. It's like for this amount of time, for a short period of time, it's just us. And I think that that's the way it's going to have to be.
Yeah. I mean, you're basically building a talent incubator.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm really thrilled to do it. It'll be interesting to see. It's between two countries right now, one of whom has a more strict policy and one of whom has a more liberal policy. And
go with the strict one.
I think you go with the strict one.
Yeah, you absolutely go with the strict one.
Yeah.
Wow. And it's everybody has been saying in the last few months that they've been watching television and movies and freaking out when people get too close or go to bars or go to restaurants. That hasn't bothered me, just because I disconnect to the artifice every time and I just start thinking about how things are made. But right. Watching Nights of Cabiria, just to bring it back to that for a second, that made me think about the freedom of just wandering around a space and shooting what you find. Because although everything is scripted and rehearsed and carefully staged and set, it looks like a documentary. It looks like Fellini just wandered around with this person.
Oh yeah, and the coverage sometimes. I love the coverage of the two of them walking through the woods toward the end.
Yeah.
And she knows, we know, he knows, everyone knows. Like there's no doubt about what's at stake.
Yes.
And he doesn't really go in. It's just they're moving freely in a pretty wide frame. We know their thoughts. We don't need to get like super close to see what he's feeling. The way he's walking, the way he walks in front of her, the way she trails along behind him. I mean, it's just, I think there's so much freedom in a Fellini frame. I also love the way he shoots night, where it's like, it's not that complicated. He just like, there's one bright light over here, maybe another one over here, and he just blasts it, and some shadows, and you can go in and out. But like this idea that shooting night has to be so complicated or look real, like everyone goes like, how do you shoot moonlight? I mean, this is, obviously not in color. So, but like, how do you shoot nighttime? No, you just turn on bright light. You go, I mean, to me, you just throw on a big light. I get so tired of everybody trying to make it look a certain way. We actually shot this was shot partly at night, what Maggie and I just shot. And we were talking about it, and I was just like, if it's really night and there wouldn't be a light, let's just let it be dark and you don't see much. Because these sort of like balloons that we all send up and this bullshit that we make out of shooting night, I just was really inspired by the way he did it. It just seemed like I'm not going to spend all my time lighting this thing.
Yeah, it's more important to capture the life than
think of where the prostitutes hang out at night in front of that big building.
Yeah, I just assume there's street lights
up against the building. Yeah, it's good.
It looked, and you don't question it, and there's no reason to. There's just this contract that we have with a film that looks like this, that everything will be accounted for. That, you know, if the reality is in front of us, of course that's where the light is.
Yeah, I also want to talk about with this movie something I think is so wild. Is like she's our romantic lead. I mean, this little woman that he loves so much, and you can tell he loves, and they died within, I think, 4 months of each other.
It was close, yeah.
Right? Like, you can sense that whatever complications they actually had, that there was real connection there, and it's really palpable. And yet, the lovemaking scene, she's in the closet or bathroom.
Bathroom. Yeah, she's removed from
it, and it's like that whole thing, and that long wandering walk she does out, and I love that she's playing a person who's involved in prostitution, and we never see her do any of it.
No, she never works. There's never even do it. There's sort of an attempt at negotiation once or twice, and it's just half-hearted, as though she doesn't really, like, it's not important to her. It's not about the money.
I mean, it's so okay that like my kids could watch it. My 8-year-old watched it, and it wasn't important.
Yeah.
I mean, she didn't know what she did for a living, honestly. She just thought.
Did it play for her? Did she like it?
She wept. I mean, that movie, and everyone was so tense. I think part of what makes it so, the movie wanders around and is episodic in some ways, is that final bit, or showing the money on the thing, and you can't even, and she's like left it back and you're like, oh my God, she's left it at the table? This little trusting angel has left it at the table. Now she's going for a long walk in the woods, and now they're at a cliffside, and my kids were just freaking out. And then the release of what happens after that with, she has nothing, and all those kids come around her, and the music, and she looks at us, and I mean, I get chills. I honestly think that this movie, for this time, where so many people, I'm not one of them. I actually feel like an incredibly fortunate person during this time. Like I'm able to do some version of my work. It's not what I would hope it would be, but it's something. I write also, so I'm able to write. I get to spend time with my kids. I'm financially able to weather it. But I look around and I see so much despair, and I just think, like, this movie goes to the bottom of absolute despair and then shows you what really matters. I mean, it's just like, I could weep.
Yeah, you watch the world build itself up around her. It's she trades one.
Capitalism. Yeah, fuck that. Don't worry. It's just your life savings.
Yeah.
That's all it is. Let it go.
Yeah. She has more life.
You have more than that. The world decided that was important. You've lost your home, your life savings. You've left your community. You're in the middle of nowhere. You don't know any of these people. You've got no place to sleep tonight. You've got no food. You've got not a coin in your pocket. And it's, everything's gonna be all right.
Yeah.
I love it.
I do too. And I in the booklet, in the Criterion disc, there's an excerpt from Fellini's autobiography where he talks about Cabiria and ultimately decides that she's the character he worries the most about. He thinks about her after the film is over, and mostly he doesn't do that with his characters. Yeah. And I wonder if that's because it's Masina and someone who would just occasionally spur him to think about it just because she looks like Cabiria, and there she is. Or whether or not it's the one ending that is almost too happy for him.
Mm-hmm.
Like some part of me wonders if he didn't pick at it because it's so satisfying, because he doesn't trust himself.
The ending to me, I mean, like I said, I've not seen every Fellini movie, but I've seen a lot of Fellini movies that the ending doesn't remind me of any of his other endings. I mean, it's deeply satisfying for me as a viewer. I wonder why he didn't use her more. So far as I know, he used her 3 times, La Strada, and then I haven't seen the one where she was older. There's one more.
Right.
Which I can't remember the name of. He did one with her where she was older. And I think, like, I would have put her in every single movie I ever made. You know? And did I don't even know that much about her in terms of her career outside of Fellini movies, you know?
I think she worked fairly frequently, and
She did.
I doubt myself.
Other movies.
Yeah, I'm not nearly as well versed on Italian cinema as I should be. So
my entire knowledge of Italian cinema comes from Father Gararelli, who was like a really interesting guy. He really lured me and a couple of other kids. I was the one who really went to all of the screenings after school, but a couple other kids did too. And he lured us in with, like, I mean, really, frankly, like sex. Like, you know, the Italian cinema just had, like, even if it wasn't like naked bodies, it had sexuality, and a kind of sexuality that seemed way more exotic and interesting than the stuff that was around me. I was in, like, you know, Connecticut.
Okay, sure. There's an earthiness to the Italian cinema of the era that you can't really get in Connecticut.
Yeah, and I was Catholic, and I was like, oh, this is like a wonderful version of what it could mean to be a Catholic.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the great thing about being a Catholic is, like, you can commit the crime. You just have to serve the time.
Right.
You know, like, you can be absolved of anything. You can do anything. And if you genuinely ask for forgiveness, you're good. And it really, I always leaned on that heavily.
It's a great loophole.
Yeah.
Well, before we get called for time, because it's about to happen, it's kind of an odd question, given that we're talking about this in conjunction with Mr. Jones. But is there anything in Knights of Cabiria that you have pulled out or used or leaned upon or incorporated into your own work, either in that film or anywhere else?
No, I think I hope to. I think what it is it's like, it takes a lot of bravery to venture into the territory that they head into there. What I'm frequently asked to do doesn't have as much a performative aspect to it. I mean, in Mr. Jones, I am playing a guy with one leg who, you know, was an apologist for Stalin, who had sex parties and smoked opium. But, like, what we were looking for and what serves the movie is for me to try to really think about who Walter Duranty was, not add in the 8-year-old Peter who's a performer. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, the first performing I ever did in my life was juggling in front of people. You know, like, I never started, before I started acting, you know, when I was like, in my second half of my sophomore year in college was the first time I ever tried it. I was like somebody who would be like, you know, I played soccer, but I did it to, like, perform in front of people. That was like sort of, I wanted to have a style and look good and entertain people, or I would juggle, or I would tell jokes, or I'd do magic tricks, or, you know, like, that's the element that is in this movie and in her performance of being like, you always know she's a performer. Mm-hmm. The eyebrows tell you she's a performer, she's a clown. And I would love a crack at doing that.
Well, we have time, you know.
Well, I have Penelope. And Penelope isn't exactly like that, the thing that I do with Maggie, but it's maybe like a little, you know, message to the world that I'm capable of more.
Oh, I can't wait to see it. And and thank you so much for your time. This was great. I'm so glad we got to do it.
Absolutely. Stay well.
You too. And plan well on this thing.
Yeah. Okay. Ciao.
Yeah. My thanks to Peter Sarsgaard, whose new movie, Mr. Jones, directed by Agnieszka, Holland, friend of the show, is now available on digital and on demand. And you should definitely check out that short film he made with Maggie Gyllenhaal, which went up in Netflix's Homemade collection earlier this week. Thanks also to Angie Power. She knows what she did. You can find Peter on Twitter at Peter Sarsgaard, all one word. And while Knights of Cabiria just went off the Criterion channel and the DVD is out of print, I'm hoping that means Criterion has a Blu-ray restoration in the works. Until then, you can find it on iTunes. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Norm Wilner and elsewhere on the internet at nowtoronto.com, where I'm hosting a bunch of podcasts these days as well as writing about movies. Go take a look. And you can find this podcast on Twitter at Semcast, S-E-M-Cast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. Our theme song is by The Last Year. If you like it, or you like the show in general, say so. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or wherever you've been enjoying us. Every little bit helps, it truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network too. Stay inside, watch movies, wear a mask if you go out. I'll see you again on Tuesday.